Chosen one. You are not here by chance. Heaven scheduled this moment with precision, and your spirit was summoned into alignment for a reason. You have stepped into a divine appointment, an anointed intersection where revelation meets readiness. Chosen one, you are standing at the very edge of a supernatural financial breakthrough, a divine wealth transfer that has already begun moving in the unseen. The heavens whisper, "Behold, I am doing a new thing," as Isaiah declared, and now that new thing concerns you. Prepare your spirit, anointed one. What you are about to hear will shift atmospheres around your name. Chosen one. It is not ending randomly. It is ending because something in you refused to break, refused to bow, refused to die. You stood when everything around you whispered collapse. You believed when your circumstances preached doubt. And without even realizing it, you triggered a divine countdown. Heaven watched your resilience, your quiet endurance, your hidden tears, and said, "Enough." What tried to destroy you reaches its expiration because your spirit matured into someone hell can no longer manipulate. Anointed one. What is unfolding around you now is not coincidence, it is intervention. Heaven has decided that the weight you carried has served its purpose, and the warfare assigned to your name no longer has legal access to your life. I know what it feels like to be pressed on every side to question if the storm will ever settle. I've lived through nights where breath felt heavier than battle, but I've also witnessed what happens when God steps into the equation. The same fire that tried to consume you becomes the fire that crowns you. You are stepping into the moment where the entire atmosphere around your name shifts. This is the point where divine timing collides with divine design. Chosen one. I need you to understand that heaven does not close chapters gently. When heaven closes something, it is abrupt, final, and irreversible. The cycle ends, not because the enemy got tired, but because you outgrew the version of yourself that kept that cycle alive. You rose, you changed, you awakened, and now heaven responds. Your endurance is not a small thing, it is a spiritual transaction. Every time you refused to quit, you were depositing faith into your future. Every time you chose integrity over convenience, heaven recorded it. Every time you kept walking with trembling legs, angels took note. That is why tomorrow marks the end of the battle. Your obedience gave God legal permission to intervene. When you said yes in private, heaven shouted yes over your destiny. If your spirit feels a stirring right now, don't ignore it. That is agreement rising. That is your soul recognizing truth before your mind catches up. Chosen one. When you respond to a prophetic word with faith, you activate the realm where the impossible becomes normal. I've seen it happen in my own life, doors that were sealed shut, suddenly unlocking opportunities appearing out of nowhere, provision flowing at the exact moment it was needed. These moments were never accidents, they were responses to alignment. Heaven always moves when a chosen one aligns, and alignment is happening to you now. The pressure you walked through wasn't punishment, it was precision. Betrayals became alarms that shook you awake. Delays became divine recalibrations that pushed you into the right timing. Closed doors became guardians that shielded you from wrong paths. These were not random hardships, they were the chisels that shaped a warrior. Chosen one, only someone with a high calling experiences pressure this intense. Hell does not waste bullets on people with no destiny. The truth is simple, the attack was never about your past. It was always about your future. Hell fought you because you threatened darkness. You carry a calling that destabilizes spiritual systems. You hold a light that exposes deception. You have an anointing that breaks patterns others have been trapped in for generations. I say this not as poetry, but as lived reality. Every major attack in my life came right before a major elevation. What fought you hardest is what fears your future most. And now, heaven steps in with a decree. It ends tomorrow. That ending is not just relief, it is transfer. Something is shifting hands. The weight leaves. The warfare lifts. The lack evaporates. The resistance breaks. The stagnation dissolves. You are stepping into supernatural acceleration, divine clarity, and the kind of breakthrough that redefines an entire life. Chosen one. This is the moment where God fights for you, where the burden is lifted not by effort, but by decree, where your next chapter opens because heaven said it is time. This is your awakening. This is your crossing. This is your shift. And as we move deeper, chosen one, you will understand why heaven refused to let you miss this moment. Chosen one, you have been walking through a season that looked like contradiction, a place where your spirit sensed destiny, but your life looked delayed. This tension wasn't failure, it was formation. Heaven was pulling you inward so that when the outward breakthrough arrived, you would not collapse under its weight. I know that kind of season intimately, the kind where you smile publicly, but battle privately, where your spirit whispers promise, but your circumstances echo silence. Yet even in that silence, God was shaping the version of you that would survive the blessing. The reason tomorrow marks the end of this long-standing battle is because something inside you has finally awakened. It wasn't the enemy's pressure that changed. It was your identity. You no longer move like the version of yourself that fear could manipulate. You no longer think like the version who apologized for being chosen. You no longer accept crumbs from people, systems, or environments that were never qualified to feed your destiny. Chosen one, heaven ends cycles the moment you rise into the self God actually designed. That shift is the true miracle. Anointed one. The you that exists today is not the same you that entered the storm. Trials have a way of burning away illusions, and storms have a way of revealing what is unshakable. The fire you walked through did not consume you because it was never sent to kill you. It was sent to reveal you. I've seen this truth unfold in my own journey. The moments where I thought I was breaking apart were actually the moments where heaven was removing the layers that never belonged to my calling. What you lost was never meant to stay. What remained is what heaven can multiply. This is why the enemy can no longer access you the same way. Darkness relies on deception, but revelation breaks all deception instantly. The moment you realized who you are, hell realized it lost its grip. The moment you reclaimed your worth, every strategy formed against you began to unravel. The moment your spirit said, "No more," heaven said, "Now." You didn't just outlast the storm, you outgrew the environment that created the storm. That is why tomorrow carries so much weight. It is not just a date, it is a declaration. The deep truth that many never learn is this: spiritual cycles are not broken by time, they are broken by transformation. That is why your tomorrow is not chronological, it's spiritual. It begins the moment your perception shifts, the moment your internal narrative aligns with heaven. Chosen one. You are stepping into the mental realm of a king, the emotional realm of someone healed, the spiritual realm of someone called. Once your mind rises, your life rises. Once your spirit stands up, your future stands with it. And what is rising in you now is not small. It is the kind of rising that alters generations, cancels patterns, and rewrites stories. When you understand who you are in God, you stop tolerating what was never meant for someone of your rank. I've seen this in the quiet moments of my own life, when old fears no longer made sense, when old insecurities no longer had power, when old environments felt too small. That is the sign of spiritual growth. Your soul starts rejecting what once felt familiar. Chosen one, this is why your tomorrow carries supernatural acceleration. Heaven elevates the mind before it elevates the season, because an unhealed mind cannot handle a healed future. You had to see yourself differently before you could walk into what God is releasing. You had to think like someone chosen before you could receive what is reserved for the chosen. And now that your internal structure has shifted, heaven is ready to unfold what has been waiting. Tomorrow is the moment alignment meets manifestation. It is when what heaven decreed begins to appear in the visible realm. You will notice it first in your spirit. Peace replacing heaviness, clarity replacing confusion, boldness replacing hesitation. Then it will show up in your decisions. No more shrinking, no more settling, no more giving your strength to what drains you. Finally, it will manifest in your external world, relationships, shifting doors, opening opportunities, multiplying provision, following you instead of fleeing from you. Anointed one. This is not wishful thinking, this is spiritual law. When identity rises, everything connected to your destiny rises with it. When your mind breaks free, cycles break free. When your spirit takes authority, circumstances bow. What fought you yesterday cannot follow you into tomorrow, because the version of you that tolerated it no longer exists. That is heaven's logic, heaven's strategy, heaven's justice. So stand in this moment with reverence. Stand in it with expectation. Stand in it knowing heaven has been preparing your tomorrow long before you had language for it. The shift is not coming, it has already begun. Chosen one, when heaven prepares a breakthrough, it always begins beneath the surface. Long before you see the shift outwardly, something begins to stir internally. It starts quietly, almost unnoticed, a restlessness. You can't explain a dissatisfaction with the familiar, a sense that you cannot stay where you are, even if nothing around you has visibly changed. This is spiritual preparation, disguised as discomfort. I know it well because I've lived through seasons where everything looked the same on the outside, yet my spirit was whispering that transition was near. That inner tension is the earliest sign that tomorrow is forming. As the old version of you fades, your environment almost reacts. You begin seeing the truth behind people's intentions. You begin noticing what drains you and what feeds you. You begin craving alignment more than approval. This shift is not random. It is heaven recalibrating your senses. There were times in my own life when I suddenly outgrew rooms I once prayed to be in, not because I became arrogant, but because my spirit became awakened. When God elevates you, He moves you mentally before He moves you physically. And once your mind ascends, the world around you feels different. Chosen one. What you must understand is that divine transitions always expose what cannot follow you. People you once relied on may grow silent, connections you valued may fade unexpectedly, and opportunities you thought were stable may suddenly fall apart. This collapse is not rejection, it is refinement. God removes what cannot survive in your next season. I remember moments when I thought I was losing everything, only to discover later that heaven was clearing the path so I wouldn't carry unnecessary weight into my future. What looks like loss today is often protection for tomorrow. There is a spiritual law that heaven follows. What is not aligned must be removed, and what is ordained must be revealed. This is why your life recently felt like a deep shaking. Not because you were failing, but because you were being separated from the version of yourself that lived in survival. You were being extracted from patterns that kept you small, mindsets that kept you fearful, and relationships that kept you stagnant. The shaking was not punishment, it was preparation. And the fact that you are still standing proves that your roots have been strengthened, not shaken loose. Anointed One Heaven has been guiding you into a new level of clarity. You began to see your own potential with new eyes. You started recognizing the distinction between who you pretended to be and who God designed you to be. This is the birthplace of elevation, the moment you stop apologizing for your calling and start acknowledging the power within you. I've seen this change in myself as well. The day I stopped hiding, my gift was the day doors that once rejected me began opening without resistance. Your identity is becoming your key, and heaven is responding to it. Tomorrow is not a calendar shift. It is an identity shift that births a spiritual shift. You are not stepping into a day. You are stepping into a version of yourself who is capable of carrying the blessings your past self could not hold. This is why the pressure intensified recently. When God prepares a chosen one for breakthrough, the resistance increases not because you are losing, but because the enemy senses what is coming. Every moment you felt overwhelmed was a sign that the spiritual atmosphere was rearranging itself around your name. Chosen One, your awakening has activated heaven's timeline. The spiritual delays that once hindered you no longer have permission to operate. This is why opportunities will begin appearing rapidly. This is why financial doors will begin opening with ease. This is why the things that used to intimidate you now feel conquerable. When identity aligns with destiny, breakthrough becomes unavoidable. I've witnessed this acceleration countless times, slow seasons suddenly turning into seasons of overflow without warning. The shift feels sudden to you, but heaven has been building it quietly for years. What you are walking into is a season where your faith becomes sight, not because you did everything perfectly, but because you refused to quit. Heaven does not reward perfection. Heaven rewards perseverance. And you, Anointed One, have persevered. You walked through the fire. You survived the silence. You kept believing when everything in you wanted to collapse. That persistence has become the seed of your tomorrow. This new chapter is not coming to you gently. It is coming with force. It is coming with divine momentum. It is coming with the kind of breakthrough that interrupts cycles and resets destinies. You are entering a season where what once intimidated you will be under your feet. What once delayed you will be behind you. What once confused you will make sense in hindsight. Chosen One, stand in expectation. You are not approaching breakthrough. You are stepping into it. And heaven is already ahead of you, preparing what your spirit is now ready to receive. Chosen One, the closer you get to your divine turning point, the more the atmosphere around you begins to shift. You may have noticed it already, subtle changes, unexpected feelings, moments of clarity rising out of nowhere. This is the spiritual signature of transition. Heaven alters the environment before it alters the season. In my own walk, I've learned that breakthrough rarely announces itself with noise. It whispers first, then manifests. And those whispers have been surrounding you lately, nudging you toward the understanding that something in your life is reaching a supernatural conclusion. As tomorrow draws near, it becomes clear why the battle felt so personal. Hell wasn't fighting your present, it was fighting your potential. The enemy always attacks hardest, the version of you that is emerging, not the version that is fading. You were never under assault because you were weak. You were targeted because you are becoming dangerous to darkness. The very intensity of your warfare is proof of your spiritual weight. I've lived through seasons where I couldn't understand why the pressure seemed unrelenting, only to later see that God was strengthening the foundation for something much bigger than I imagined. Chosen one. You have stepped into a moment where your inner world no longer matches your old surroundings. This disconnect is not confusion, it is confirmation. When heaven elevates you internally, the external must shift to catch up. That is why old habits suddenly feel childish, old conversations feel draining, and old relationships feel misaligned. The version of you that once settled for less has been replaced by the version who craves purpose, truth, and alignment. Growth always creates discomfort, not because you are lost, but because you are being called higher. What is ending tomorrow is not just a cycle, it is the permission you once unknowingly gave to everything that drained your power. You may not have realized how often you tolerated disrespect, minimized your voice, or shrank your brilliance to make others comfortable. I have done the same, dimmed myself so others wouldn't be intimidated, carried burdens I was never meant to hold, ignored red flags because I was afraid of losing people. But heaven never allows a chosen one to remain hidden in self-doubt. At some point, the awakening must come, and yours is here. Anointed One Heaven has been illuminating truth within you, truth about your worth, your calling, your capacity, and your identity. With that truth, something irreversible happens. Chains that used to bind you lose their logic. Fears that used to control you lose their influence. Opinions that used to matter lose their voice. This is the power of spiritual awakening. It dissolves every lie by exposing the truth beneath it. My own awakening came slowly through quiet nights and whispered prayers, but when it arrived, it changed everything. That same unveiling is happening in you now. You must understand that tomorrow is not simply the end of a storm. It is the beginning of a new spiritual structure within you. You are not stepping into the world as who you were. You are stepping into it as who you were always meant to be. The alignment you feel internally is heaven's confirmation that the waiting was not wasted. Every tear refined you. Every setback clarified you. Every disappointment stretched you into someone capable of carrying greater glory. You are not fragile. You are fortified. Chosen. 1. The emotional weight you carried was never a sign of weakness. It was a sign of spiritual sensitivity, the kind found in individuals who are deeply connected to the unseen. You felt spiritual warfare earlier and deeper than others because your spirit is more attuned, more aware, more awakened. I've experienced seasons where the heaviness didn't make sense logically, but made perfect sense spiritually. That sensitivity is not a flaw, it is a gift. And now that the veil is lifting, that gift will serve you, not burden you. As your tomorrow approaches, heaven is orchestrating a divine exchange, old strength for new strength, old identity for true identity, old battles for new breakthroughs. What you are stepping into is not subtle, it is supernatural. You are entering a chapter written by God Himself, a chapter where provision flows, where clarity guides you, where peace becomes your default posture. This is not optimism, it is divine promise in motion. When God ends a cycle, He replaces it with purpose. When He closes a chapter, He opens a destiny. Chosen one, let this truth settle into your spirit. The battle ends tomorrow because you rose today. And once you rise, heaven responds. Chosen one. When heaven prepares you for a divine ending, it also prepares you for a divine beginning. These two realities always arrive together. One door closes because another is finally ready to open. If you have felt caught between two worlds, not fully in the old, not yet anchored in the new, that is the precise signature of spiritual transition. I've stood in that space myself, wondering why nothing looked different, while everything felt different. That in-between place is not stagnation, it is pregnancy. Something in you has been forming, and tomorrow is the moment of its birth. The reason heaven is ending this long cycle is because your spirit has finally stepped into readiness. You may not have seen your own growth clearly, but heaven did. The way you handled disappointment differently, the way you protected your peace more fiercely, the way you prayed with more conviction even when you felt empty. These were all signs of maturity, signs the old version of you could not produce. Growth rarely looks heroic in the moment. It looks like surviving another day, breathing through another storm, choosing faith over collapse. But heaven counts every one of those choices as victory. Anointed one, something powerful happens when a chosen one refuses to bow to despair. Heaven watches, heaven measures, heaven responds. You have reached a threshold, a spiritual edge, and when a chosen one reaches that edge, divine intervention activates. I've seen it many times in my own walk. The very second I lose strength is the moment God steps in. It's not because He wants you weak, it's because He wants you aligned. Breakthrough rarely comes when you feel strong. It comes when you feel surrendered. Tomorrow marks the moment where surrender meets fulfillment. Not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of identity. The moment when you stop fighting battles that no longer belong to you and allow heaven to carry what your shoulders were never designed for. The weight lifts, not because the problem disappears instantly, but because you finally understand whose battle it really is. This is the revelation that shifts timelines, the realization that you are chosen, not condemned, protected, not abandoned, guided, not lost, chosen one. Every disappointment you endured was a classroom. Every betrayal taught you spiritual precision. Every delay sharpened your discernment. Every closed door protected your assignment. Nothing was wasted, even the moments you regret. I look back on my own journey and see how the things I thought ruined me actually redirected me. The things I prayed God would remove were the very things He used to elevate me. You may not see the full picture yet, but heaven does, and the picture is beautiful. Part of what ends tomorrow is the internal battle between who you were and who you are becoming. You have carried fragments of your old self for far too long, the doubts, the outdated beliefs, the wounds you silently accepted as personality traits. But tomorrow announces the merging of your identity with your destiny. The fractured parts of you are being gathered, healed, and restored into someone whole, someone strong, someone spiritually anchored. Wholeness is not perfection, it is alignment. And that alignment is unfolding in you now. Anointed one, I need you to understand this with your full spirit. You did not survive by accident. The enemy's attacks were designed with precision, but God's protection was even more precise. Times when you should have broken, you didn't. Times when you should have lost your mind, you didn't. Times when you thought the season would bury you, it built you. This endurance is the reason tomorrow carries so much power. Heaven rewards those who refuse to quit. There is a principle I've learned in my own spiritual path. God does not end seasons quietly. He ends them with signs, with shifts, with unexpected clarity. You may notice yourself letting go of things you used to cling to. You may feel detached from worries that once consumed you. You may feel a strange peace in places where you used to feel pressure. These are spiritual indicators that heaven has already issued the decree enough. Chosen one, you are stepping into a supernatural reset, a clean break from everything that once held you down. What once repeated ends. What once resisted releases. What once drained you dissolves. Heaven is not just ending a cycle. Heaven is establishing a new standard in your life, a standard of peace, a standard of purpose, a standard of divine momentum. You will not return to what God has delivered you from. And as tomorrow dawns, heaven pronounces a new reality over your name. Rise, chosen one. There comes a moment in every divine journey where your spirit begins to recognize what your mind has not yet caught up to, that you are no longer who you were, and therefore the life connected to that old version can no longer continue. This realization is not sudden. It grows quietly inside you like dawn slowly breaking through a long night. You start noticing that conversations feel different, your reactions shift, and your heart is no longer stirred by what used to hold your attention. This is the whisper of transformation, the early signs that tomorrow is not simply near, it is already unfolding inside you. As heaven prepares a new chapter for you, it often requires separation before elevation. Not because people are evil, but because not everyone can walk with a chosen one past certain spiritual thresholds. I've lived through seasons where I couldn't understand why certain people drifted away or why familiar spaces suddenly felt foreign. Only later did I realize that heaven had removed what could not carry the weight of my next assignment. You are experiencing a similar separation now. It is not personal, it is prophetic. What cannot honor your calling cannot stay attached to your future. Anointed One. What ends tomorrow is not just the warfare around you. It is the internal permission you once gave to self-doubt, fear, and unworthiness. Somewhere along your journey, pain tried to convince you that you were ordinary, that your voice didn't matter, that your calling was exaggerated or imagined. But heaven has been rewriting that inner narrative. You are seeing glimpses of the strength you always carried but never claimed. You are recognizing the authority that was always woven into your spirit. This inner awakening is not emotional, it is spiritual. It is evidence that the old identity is losing its grip. This shift becomes unmistakable when you start craving a life that aligns not with your past, but with your potential. You begin desiring clarity more than comfort, purpose, more than predictability, and alignment more than acceptance. I felt that shift in my own journey the moment when the desire to honor God's calling outweighed the fear of disappointing people. That shift is happening in you too, chosen one. It is the sign that heaven is preparing you for a realm of blessing that requires a stronger, wiser, more awakened version of yourself. Your tomorrow begins with the way you see your challenges now. Where you once saw obstacles, you now see training. Where you once saw loss, you now see redirection. Where you once saw endings, you now see preparation. Heaven has been teaching you to interpret your battles not as punishments, but as invitations. Invitations to rise, invitations to trust, invitations to evolve. Every hardship reshaped you, every setback refined you, every disappointment repositioned you. This wisdom is the gold you are carrying into your next season. Chosen one, heaven is calling you into a new mental space, a higher realm of thinking, feeling, and decision-making. This is why your old patterns feel uncomfortable now. The habits that once made sense no longer do. The cycles you once tolerated now feel suffocating. The versions of yourself you once accepted now feel foreign. That discomfort is not failure, it is transformation. A butterfly struggles inside the cocoon not because it is trapped, but because its wings are forming. You too are forming wings. And those wings are not symbolic. They are spiritual authority, discernment, resilience, and boldness. Heaven has strengthened your mind in secret so that when tomorrow arrives, you will walk into your new season with confidence and clarity. I've learned that before God gives a chosen one a new level of influence, He gives them a new level of identity. Without identity, a blessing becomes a burden, but with identity, blessing becomes legacy. You are being prepared to carry legacy. As the final moments of this cycle close, heaven is releasing a deep, supernatural peace upon you. This peace is not the absence of noise, but the presence of assurance, the knowing that you are kept guided and covered. You may feel this peace in unusual ways, in moments where you should feel anxious, but don't, in decisions that once felt complicated, but now feel simple, in circumstances that look uncertain, but feel divinely timed. Peace is heaven's signature that the battle is no longer yours. Anointed one, everything about your tomorrow is purposeful. Heaven is not improvising. Nothing happening around you is random. You are being aligned with precision, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and even relationally. The doors that once refused to open will open, not because you push harder, but because heaven has declared that the time has come. You will no longer chase what belongs to you. What belongs to you will begin to recognize you. Chosen one, stand steady in this transition. Heaven is finishing something that once drained you, so it can begin something that will define you. And when tomorrow arrives in full measure, you will understand that everything, every tear, every storm, every loss was woven into the pattern of a destiny too powerful to be stopped. Chosen one. The closer you stand to the threshold of breakthrough, the more the spiritual world responds to your movement. You may not see the response with your natural eyes, but your spirit feels it. The pressure tightening or lifting, the sudden clarity, the unusual stillness, or the strange anticipation that rises without explanation. These sensations are not random emotions. They are signals. They are the echoes of heaven rearranging things in preparation for your tomorrow. I have felt these shifts myself long before any external change appeared. They taught me that heaven speaks inwardly before it acts outwardly. What is happening to you now is not simply emotional growth, it is spiritual repositioning. Your thoughts are being elevated, your discernment sharpened, your vision purified. You are no longer thinking like someone who is trying to survive. You are learning to think like someone who is destined to reign. This mental elevation is the foundation of supernatural promotion. In my own life, the moment my thinking shifted, everything else followed: opportunities, connections, resources, clarity. Your inner world is aligning with the greatness heaven planted inside you, and that alignment is the birthplace of divine acceleration. Anointed one, you have been wrestling with questions that once terrified you. Who am I now? What am I becoming? Why does everything feel so unfamiliar? These questions are not signs of confusion, they are signs of awakening. When your identity evolves, your soul begins rejecting anything that no longer mirrors your purpose. Old patterns fall off. Old relationships feel distant. Old fears lose their relevance. This is not instability, it is transformation. You are being pulled away from the limited version of yourself and drawn into the identity that heaven always knew was yours. The ending that arrives tomorrow is not only the end of a battle, but the end of a mindset that once kept you small. You are shedding the belief that you must prove yourself. You are releasing the idea that worthiness must be earned. You are abandoning the fear that if you grow, you will lose love. I understand these fears deeply. I've felt them whisper in moments of transition, whispering that stepping into purpose meant stepping away from comfort. But the whisper was wrong. Growth never takes you away from what's meant for you. It only removes what's not meant to stay. Chosen one. Heaven is ushering you into a season where your spirit becomes louder than your fears. This is why you feel internal strength rising in strange waves. One day you feel like collapsing, and the next you feel like conquering. These fluctuations are not contradictions, they are recalibration. Your old self is losing power. Your new self is gaining authority. When heaven strengthens a chosen one, it does not do so through convenience, but through revelation, the kind of revelation that shifts your entire posture toward life. Part of your transformation involves seeing your value through God's eyes, not through the eyes of those who overlooked or underestimated you. Many of us learn our worth through the wrong mirrors, mirrors of rejection, mirrors of trauma, mirrors of scarcity. I spent years believing I had to prove my value to people who never had the capacity to recognize it. But heaven does not mirror you through human perspective. Heaven mirrors you through divine purpose. And you are beginning to see that reflection now, strong, chosen, set apart, protected, destined. As this realization grows, something extraordinary happens. You stop chasing what is beneath you. You stop accepting what drains you. You stop negotiating with what wounds you. You stop waiting for permission to be who God called you to be. This shift is not arrogance. It is alignment. When you understand your anointing, you no longer tolerate what contradicts it and what ends tomorrow. Chosen one is the version of you that tolerated less than what heaven ordained. Heaven is restoring your clarity in this season. You will begin recognizing what is sent by God and what is sent as a distraction. You will begin sensing the difference between opportunities and traps. You will begin feeling the spiritual weight of people's presence, who brings peace and who brings chaos, who elevates your vision and who reduces your voice. This clarity is heaven's way of ensuring that you never again walk blindly into environments that were never built to carry your destiny. Anointed. One, you are stepping into a chapter where blessings will feel natural, not forced. Where breakthroughs will unfold with ease, not struggle, where divine timing will work for you instead of against you. You are not entering a season of striving. You are entering a season of receiving wisdom, receiving favor, receiving provision, receiving rest. I have walked through seasons where everything felt like a battle, only to step into moments where everything began to flow. The flow was not luck, it was alignment, and that same flow is approaching your life. What tomorrow brings is not simply relief from struggle, but activation of destiny. Heaven is not merely removing something from your life. It is releasing something into your life, something you have been prepared for, something you have been matured for, something you once prayed for long before you had the strength to carry it. You are being ushered into a supernatural turning point, one that will reveal why the pressure was so great, why the silence was so long, and why the battle was so intense. Chosen one, stand with anticipation, stand with reverence, stand with a heart wide open. Your tomorrow is not waiting, it is arriving. Chosen one. As you move closer to the divine threshold, heaven has prepared for you. Something deep within begins to shift in ways that are subtle yet undeniable. You start noticing changes not because life suddenly became easier, but because your spirit grew louder than your circumstances. The old fears don't grip you the same way. The old wounds don't define you the same way. The old voices don't influence you the same way. This inner shift is the clearest sign that heaven has already marked the end of a long season, even if your natural life hasn't fully caught up yet. Anointed. One heaven always brings transformation internally before it manifests externally. And you have been in a quiet, internal awakening for some time, moments where you woke up with an unusual peace, moments where you sensed a deep separation from old patterns, old attachments, old distractions, moments where you realized that even though nothing had changed around you, everything had changed within you. This is what spiritual maturity looks like. It rarely feels dramatic. It feels like clarity rising layer by layer until you suddenly recognize that you are no longer the person you once were. Part of what ends tomorrow is the version of you that lived in survival mode. The you who tolerated disrespect just to keep peace. The you who lowered your standards to avoid being alone. The you who silenced your voice to avoid conflict. The you who hid your anointing because you feared being misunderstood. I understand these internal battles deeply because I've lived them. I've carried the weight of wanting to be accepted while trying to protect my calling. But heaven never allows a chosen one to stay trapped in a version of themselves that doesn't match their destiny. Your awakening has been gradual but powerful. You began to see your worth with clearer eyes. You started craving alignment more than attachment. You recognized that peace is more valuable than proximity. You learned that solitude can be a sanctuary, not a punishment. These realizations didn't come from people, they came from heaven. Every time you felt off in certain spaces or around certain individuals, it wasn't insecurity speaking, it was discernment. Heaven was refining your sensitivity so you could recognize what is meant for your future and what belongs to your past. Chosen one tomorrow represents more than an end. It represents the breaking of an inner agreement, the agreement that once allowed fear, doubt, or unworthiness to dictate your decisions. That agreement has expired. You no longer make choices from wounds, you make them from wisdom. You no longer interpret delays as abandonment, you see them as divine rearrangements. You no longer view endings as failures, you see them as holy closures. This is the mindset of someone rising into their calling. This is the posture of someone who heaven can now trust with greater responsibility. Anointed. One heaven is elevating your identity because what is coming next requires a version of you that cannot be easily shaken. You are entering a chapter where emotional clarity will become your compass. You will feel the weight of truth quicker. You will sense misalignment earlier. You will hear God's whisper clearer. This is heaven preparing you not just to survive your next season, but to steward it. Destiny without discernment becomes a battlefield. But destiny with discernment becomes a launching pad. And heaven is equipping you with both strength and vision. Another part of what ends tomorrow is the spiritual permission you unknowingly gave to cycles of delay. When you didn't know your worth, you accepted less. When you didn't know your identity, you tolerated confusion. When you didn't know your power, you allowed things to linger that should have been dismissed. But now that you see clearly, those cycles cannot remain. Heaven ends what you have outgrown. And you have outgrown much. Chosen one. You are stepping into a moment where everything begins aligning with who you are becoming, not who you were. This alignment may feel like loss to the untrained eye, but spiritually it is rebirth. You are being positioned with precision in your relationships, your decisions, your opportunities, your thinking, and your direction. Nothing is random. Heaven is preparing the path ahead of you while refining the heart within you. Tomorrow is not just the end of a battle. It is the rise of a new identity. And once identity rises, destiny follows. Chosen one. As you stand on the edge of this divine shift, heaven is revealing something profound. You did not endure all that pain for nothing. Every struggle, every disappointment, every silent night was part of a precise spiritual preparation. You may not have understood why the pressure was so heavy, or why the warfare felt so personal, but now, as tomorrow approaches, the meaning begins to unfold. The intensity was not meant to crush you. It was meant to shape you into someone who could carry what heaven is about to release. Anointed One, heaven does not allow those with small destinies to walk through deep refinement. Only those marked with spiritual weight experience the kind of transformation you've endured. The spiritual silence you navigated was not the absence of God, it was the presence of construction. I've lived through seasons where I questioned whether God was distant or whether I had lost my way. Only later did I learn that heaven does its greatest work underground in the unseen places of the soul. You too have been undergoing a divine rebuilding. Part of what ends tomorrow is the identity you once carried, the part of you shaped by survival rather than purpose. The you who doubted your worth. The you who accepted inconsistency. The you who thought you had to shrink to be loved. These versions of you cannot enter the next chapter because they were created by wounds, not destiny. Heaven is closing that chapter because you have outgrown it. The old cycles depended on the old version of you, and since that version is gone, the cycle no longer has authority. Chosen One, the internal changes you've been sensing, the clarity, the boldness, the quiet strength rising, these are spiritual confirmations. You no longer think the way you once did. You no longer crave what you once craved. You no longer tolerate what once drained you. That detachment is not coldness, it is evolution. When heaven lifts you higher, your spirit naturally disconnects from anything that cannot follow. This shift also brings a new kind of peace, one that comes from recognition, not relief. It's the peace that emerges when you finally see yourself as heaven sees you. I have felt this peace after seasons of chaos, the gentle but unshakable awareness that I was no longer the same person who entered the storm. That same peace is settling over you now, signaling the end of the battle and the beginning of divine alignment. Anointed One, tomorrow marks more than the end of warfare. It marks the rise of authority within you. You are stepping into a version of yourself that no longer questions your worth or apologizes for your calling. You will make decisions with clarity. You will walk with confidence. You will sense spiritual misalignment instantly. This is the awakening heaven has been preparing in you, the awakening required for the blessings waiting on the other side. Another cycle that ends tomorrow is the feeling that you must earn love, worthiness, or belonging. You have spent too long carrying the weight of others' expectations, trying to be enough for people who could not even see you clearly. But heaven is rewriting that story. You are stepping into a chapter where you will be valued without performing, appreciated without explaining, and honored without begging. What once required striving will now flow naturally. Chosen One. Your tomorrow has been forming quietly behind the scenes long before you sensed anything shifting. Heaven did not delay your breakthrough. Heaven was constructing it. And now that your spirit is aligned, the release will come with speed and clarity. You may not see the full change immediately, but you will feel it, the lightness, the relief, the unmistakable closure of a season that lasted far too long. Anointed One. Everything you endured has prepared you for what heaven is releasing. Nothing was wasted, nothing was random, and nothing was meaningless. The divine hand that carried you through the wilderness is the same hand leading you into promise. Your tomorrow begins when you accept that the old chapter has truly ended. Chosen One. As we come to the close of this message, pause and breathe in the truth that heaven has spoken over you. You are not standing in an ordinary moment. You are standing in your kairos moment, the exact divine second where endings meet beginnings and where the supernatural transfer God prepared for you begins to unfold in full measure. The shift is not coming. It has already started moving in your direction. Anointed one, may the glory of God wrap around you like a mantle. May every lingering weight fall off your shoulders. May courage rise where fear once lived. May clarity guide where confusion once clouded your steps. And may the peace that surpasses understanding settle on you tonight as a sign that heaven has taken the battle out of your hands. I speak over you, your spirit is awakening, your identity is rising, and your new chapter has already opened. Walk forward with reverence, with alignment, with expectation. What God has ordained cannot be blocked, delayed, or reversed. Tomorrow does not simply end a cycle, it activates a destiny. Chosen one. If this word resonated with your spirit, let it be known. Share what God stirred in you. Leave a comment as your declaration of agreement. Subscribe so you never miss what heaven releases next. Not out of routine, but as an act of faith, an act of alignment with your breakthrough. Go now with blessing, with covering, and with holy confidence. Your tomorrow is here. Your transfer has begun, and heaven is walking you into everything written with your name on it.